So today, as ma'am discussed, that I'm going to talk about the dietetic practices in Australia currently and how the way to forward as an entrepreneur. So my presentation has, I have divided my presentation in two parts. First part, I'm going to talk about what are the dietetic practice and protocols used in healthcare settings and hospitals over here in Australia, especially, screening the malnourished older Australians. And what are the definitions and what are the issue currently going on, the prevalence in Australia in older population, how we screen them, assess them and their diagnosis, and what are the MDD approach we apply for the patient who are malnourished, and how do we follow up once the patient is discharged from the hospital. And my second part of presentation is going to cover if we are as a dietitian want to work in Australia, how you can take your career further in Australia. And I'm always there as an alumni, as a MS University in South Australia, to help you out if you are moving to Australia, and as a mentor, because I'm currently a mentor in from Dietitian Association of Australia as well, so I can guide you and I can be a mentor as well. Next slide. So before I go ahead, as we all know, currently the COVID going on around the world, and hopefully things are better soon. I just want to share one of the, the data currently in Australia, that there were around 7,251 cases identified, and out of those, 600 cases, 6,683 cases were already recovered, and in total we just had 102 deaths. I'm specially residing in South Australia, so currently the restrictions have been eased, especially in a healthcare setting. However, we still have the restriction, get together and social gathering for more than 100 people. So that makes a really difficult in a health point of view as a dietitian, where we have to give a more group discussion and one-to-one dietetics advice. So let's talk about the how the older population consists in South Australia. So majority of older people make a considerable proportion of Australia's population. In a survey in 2017, they found that 15% of Australians were aged 65 and over. In 2016, they also found that 1 in 3 older people were born overseas, and the majority of these were born in non-English speaking country. So that makes us very difficult when we are giving a dietary advice to any patient who are from a different country. So we have to find out which traditional food they are eating and what are their dietary habits and practices, because they are around the world. So in Australia, the population is diverse, and everybody, as a dietitian, we have to understand each food culture and their dietary pattern before planning any meal plan. When they are hospitalized, we have to specially plan a diet accordingly as well. uh, as we all know, the malnutrition is a state in which a deficiency of nutrients such as energy, protein, vitamins and mineral causes measurable adverse effect on body composition, functions or clinical outcome. So malnutrition is both a cause and a consequence of ill health. What is the prevalence of malnutrition currently in Australia in an older population? So as per Dietitian Association of Australia, they found it's a high prevalence in older population, which is usually under recognized and under diagnosed, because there were not many tools before which were identified to screen the older nutrition in older patients. Also, one of the survey conducted by Meals on Wheels. So this is the organization, is the largest organization who serves the nutritious meal to the older population in Australia. And they found around 40% of older people living in community are either malnourished or at risk of malnutrition. Thus, early nutrition support should therefore be assessed as soon as possible, preferably upon admission or with ongoing monitoring for all critically ill patients, to ensure individual needs are identified and catered for to improve the outcome. So basically, if we diagnose them earlier, the more consequences can be reduced as soon as possible, and they can go back and enjoy the quality of life. The next slide show the figure of contributing factors and health outcome associated with the malnutrition. So as we can see on the slide that there are various conditions which are related to malnutrition, such as like depression, a poor digestion, or they have dysphagia, they don't have appetite, or even a physical and social factors, like because they are in older population, and over here people mostly stay in aged care setting, not with their family, they are alone. So that is one of the factor also affecting their overall health. Also the loss of taste and smell as they grow, and early satiety, which can lead to increased morbidity. So the health outcome may be they have to stay more longer in the hospital, poor wound healing if they are a critically ill patient, and it also increases the risk of osteoporosis or recurrent falls, fractures, etc. And it also increases the treatment burden and financial burden on government, because here everything is covered by government. All the health services and all the medical treatment is covered by government, which is called Medicare health system. So here when the patient get admitted to the hospital, they don't have to all the expenses are bad by government. So that leads to financial burden on the government as well. And of course the quality of life reduces, because the loss of independence requiring the support and care, and the premature institutional placement. So these are the factors which are affected to malnutrition, and the that affects the overall health outcome. So how do we do assessment for the malnutrition? So in hospital healthcare setting where I have worked, and most of the hospital in Australia, they use major two nutritional tools to assess the malnutrition. One is the mini nutritional assessment, which is called MNA, and second is subjective global assessment. So basically these two tools helps to identify early, when patients get admitted, whether they are at risk of developing malnutrition, and early treatment can be given to them, so which will reduce the consequences of a more stay in the hospital and their adverse effect on the nutrients as well. So if mini nutritional assessment is used, it's basically used for elderly patient, and the screening include all the anthropometric data, which is a weight, height, uh, MUSE, etc. Also, in that they also identify the dietary habits, whether they are eating, how many days they haven't been eating, and etc. Similarly, the SGA as well is also used for elderly patient, but basically more into the acute rehab community centers, residential aged care, where they have surgery or geriatric population, oncology and renal conditions. And similarly, they can be identified in three different categories: SGA-A, which is well nourished; SGA-B, which is a mid to moderate malnourished; and SGA-C, severe malnourished. And depending on the categories they have been identified, the proper nutritional meal plan have been given to them to treat. So the next slide shows the two different tools which we use it. So one is the example where MNH, so where we ask all the questions to patient or the nursing staff or the aged care staff who are taking care of the patient. And similarly SGA, where on the first page we can see that patient's weight, height and anthropometric measurements we can write down. And the second is a dietary questionnaire, where how many days they haven't been eaten and what are the conditions. If they can't answer, we can always check about the whether their cruise has been lows, or they are, what are the eating, the quantity. Also in the hospital, if the patient is not able to provide some details, we also have a meal assessment plan kind of thing, where for 1 to 3 days we check how much they are eating, and then we make an assessment, and then we can identify them whether they are malnourished, in the category of malnutrition, malnourished, and then we can treat them accordingly. And for both of them, when we are in a clinical setting, the training will be given by the senior dietitians to fill out the forms and divide and identify them. So after we identify the patient, whether they are the malnourished or not, and or depending on the medical or clinical condition, the table which is shown over here it's been taken from the NEMO, that is a Queensland government health organization developed by them. And we use this to basically calculate their energy and protein requirement depending on their condition. So basically when it's acutely elderly patient, we give them 25 to 30 kilocalorie per kg body weight, and the protein which we give between 1 to 1.5. But we always start from the lower end, and then we gradually increase, because when they are not eating, sometimes they also go into the refeeding syndrome, and then we have to follow the specific different guidelines for them, for not giving a sudden nutrition to them, because their body is already in the fasting state and starvation state. So we gradually start giving them nutrition, and calculation is based on that. Similarly, if the patients are critically in other conditions, we can use the same equations and different criterias. and the fluid requirement as well, depending on their body weight. We calculate that for the hydration purpose. After the calculations, we can decide whether patient need oral nutrition support, or if they are critically ill and they are not able to eat from mouth, then the various other ways can be decided, such as enteral tube feeding or a total parenteral nutrition. And when patient is able to eat, and we start from the ONS as an oral nutrition support first, keeping the Australian dietary guideline in our mind, and try to fortify meals and drinks and snacks, and plus special high energy, high protein diet. So in hospitals, we have special drinks and special fortified meals, and also adding the calories in the meals by adding butter and cream and cheese or etc., the high energy protein meal, which will give an additional energy to meet the requirement, because they need that extra amount of energy due to the loss in the lean body mass. And when we are doing any malnutrition treatment or any patient treatment, here it is always an MDT approach. Whether we are treating a patient, it's a renal patient or a cardiac patient or a malnourished patient, it is a MDT approach. So dietitian can refer to patient to be assessed with the other allied health member, such as speech pathologist, because if the patient is older and they cannot chew the food or they cannot eat the food properly, the speech path can identify the different consistency of food, and they can put them on a mild to moderate consistency diet or vitamized diet, or depending on their chewing capacity. Similarly, the physiotherapist can also help the patient to if they have some back pain and if they need some exercise, so they can go for exercise physiologists and psychologists when they are feeling isolated, or they have gone to the trauma, or that psychological issue is affecting their overall health. So basically, whenever we are working as a dietitian, or whenever other allied health members are treating a patient, we all get involved as a multidisciplinary team, and as a whole we all give a special recommendation, whether it's a dietary or exercise, to patient and their respective GP, so then they can follow up with the patient. And after the discharge, we can send the same follow-up dietetic plan to their personal GP, where after the hospitalization they go to their private practitioner or a general practitioner, where they can follow up. And we always write the similar discharge plan to their clinic dietitian as well. So patient will continue to see the dietitian, because here in Australia specifically, through the government, the patient can see 8 times allied health professionals. So anytime when they want to see the dietitian or physiotherapist in a year, they can visit them in 8 times. They can see the dietitian 8 times, and every time they visit the dietitian, they get paid by the government. So this is very important, and in Australia, the dietitian profession is highly recognized, and which is great thing, because they think that not only the doctors but the dietitian and physiotherapists have the equal weightage, and patients should visit them compulsory, or they can visit them, so they don't get charged, and they get the special benefit of allied health professionals as well. So this is the whole one simple scenario I mentioned over here, that how patients get treated in hospital, how they get assessed, what are the interventions given, and then what happens once they get discharged, and how the follow-up happens. Now, the next part of my slide is about how to become APD in Australia, and what are the bodies who check to check assessment and exams. So basically, APD is an accredited practicing dietitian in Australia. It is the only credential recognized by the Australian government, Medicare, as I mentioned before, the Department of Veteran Affairs, and most private health fund, as the quality standard for the nutrition and dietetic service providers in Australia. It is a recognized trademark protected by law. So basically, if you want to work as a dietitian in Australia, the only way to get to work, you have to be an APD, and you have to get become a full member with the DAA, Dietitian Association of Australia. Without that, you cannot practice over here, because all the funds are funded by government, and it's all rebated by the Medicare of Australia. So APD status is must if you want to work as a dietitian. Otherwise, you cannot practice as a dietitian in Australia. And similarly, like to become an APD, there are two ways you can be an APD. Either you can get graduated from the accredited Australian university, which I have done here as well, masters, or you can be overseas trained dietitian like in MS University. And here I want to give one more light, that it was so beneficial for me to pass out from MS University, because that is the only degree from the, like, Gujarat, it was recognized, the MS University, and it was so good for me to give an exam and pass the exam. So when you want to give an exam, they see from where are from where are you graduated, and the points will be given as well. Or even when you are doing the graduation from the Australian university, you do get credits for a couple of subjects which you have already done in overseas in your country. But it is only possible because I have done from MS University, which, as Meenakshi ma'am told previously in her slides, and what are the things they are doing, and it is highly recognized degree and university. So that makes stand us out different than other people, and that's really good. And each university, if you want to study over here as well, each university have the recognized dietitian degree course. Currently there are 2,800 dietitian as per DA who are a full dietitian and APD and practicing dietitian. And Mm. Which are the areas where they can work? So there are several areas where we can work, whether it's a hospital, is a private setting, community care, aged care, residential care, disability center, NDIS scheme, food industry. You can be a research and a teaching mentor. Even here in the management of corporate companies, you get hired, public relations, marketing program, because there's a vast field for the dietitian over here, and it's highly recognized because they understand the importance of dietitian in the overall health. And that's why it's a very it's a highly recognized profession in Australia. Thank you.